Hi, I'm Dan Crowley. I'm the Global Head of Trust and Safety and Data Protection at Quizlet. For those of you who aren't familiar, Quizlet is an education technology and learning platform that serves over 50 million students and teachers every month. What I'd like to talk about today is how we built the privacy and safety program at Quizlet in a small, growing organization and effectively threw out the old classic checklist and replaced it with a privacy-by-ethos culture. To begin, I'd like to bring us back 20 years to when Scott McNealy famously declared, "You have zero privacy anyway, get over it." Well, he was primarily talking about governmental overreach. The reality is that privacy interest didn't go away for anyone, not the public and not for regulators. And so what we've seen over the last 20 years is an increase in enforcement actions and interest in privacy, certainly by regulators, who, as we can see, have dramatically increased their enforcement of data privacy rights, but also by the public, who have increased their understanding. Enforcement from regulators comes not only in the form of tangible fines, but also in new regulation, like the GDPR, which establishes new and higher standards of accountability for companies who process personal information. But regulators didn't just leave us with fines and new administrative burdens. They also left us with a framework, the Privacy by Design framework. This framework has 7 core principles: that privacy should be proactive, not reactive. There should be strong default settings. It should be embedded into, not bolted onto, the processes and products of these businesses. Privacy can be positive sum. It's not a zero-sum game. There needs to be end-to-end security. We should have openness and transparency. And fundamentally, we need to build respect and demonstrate that respect for the user. Companies took that to heart. And it seems simple enough, clear concepts, and we've seen this explosion of privacy tooling, privacy advocacy groups, privacy advisories in the last decade. But we're still all here at this conference trying to figure out, how do we effectively make privacy work for our companies and for our users? We know what good programs look like, don't we? I think we've all seen them. Triage questionnaires, your privacy impact assessments, your DPIAs, your policy approvals, your exceptions, risk assessments, vendors, certifications, audits, controls, matrices. But is that the right answer for every company at every point in time? I'm not sure, because what we've also seen are similar pitfalls across all of those established privacy processes. These are common issues that we've almost all certainly run up against. We lack visibility and access. And frankly, we can't fix what we don't see. Sometimes we lack resources. We can sometimes have small, undermanned teams, and there's only 24 hours in a day. We can run into politics. How do you avoid being the blocker? And then fundamentally, is there a clash of cultures? When we look to add process, what a lot of teams hear are delays. And when they hear delays, they hear less impact. Is that something that we can actually overcome with just the classic good program processes? One thing that I've learned, especially at Quizlet, is that these issues can be especially acute in small and rapidly growing organizations. So what do? Take that checklist and throw it right in the trash. The single most impactful thing you can do as your company's privacy person is turn everyone else into a privacy person too. It's not the document you write. It's not the controls that you build in. It's not the triage questionnaires that you fill out. It's leaving behind a culture that understands privacy, that respects privacy, and encourages other people to build it into their daily lives. Now, it's probably too much when I say throw out the checklist entirely, because there's absolutely a time and place for it. But especially if you're in a small and growing organization, keep that checklist for yourself. Figure out what are the policies you need. How are you going to organize your data maps, your records, your assessments? That's what's important to begin with for that checklist. For everyone else, focus on culture and ask questions. Why does privacy matter? What are our principles? When you're working with a team developing a new feature or a new product or integrating a new vendor, ask what could go wrong, but more importantly, what more could go right? Step back and invite them into a conversation about what do our users expect of us? And lastly, what can they, as the product manager, engineer, designer, what can you teach me? Because privacy is a multi-factored, cross-functional skill, and it cannot be solved by any one team or one organization. Everyone has something to contribute, and everyone needs to feel like they're a valued part of the conversation. This is how you build a privacy-by-ethos culture. And so some other tips that we've learned are make it fun. As simple as that sounds, it's the single most important thing you can do. Your program is determined by a checklist. It's as fragile as the person least likely to follow it. I think we all know someone who's not very high on that list. Have prizes, have games, do whatever you can to make sure people understand you're not there to be the boring compliance person. You're there to add value and add to the culture. At Quizlet, we made literal hats with trust and safety on them that we left in every conference room so that any team member could literally put on their trust and safety hat in any product or business meeting they were having. We also gamified phishing exercises, turning them into not a compliance training, but something fun and interesting for everyone. Start early. So often, teams get lost or things don't go right because teams start too late. And that can be in the development cycle, but that's also building your own culture. Be consistent and be present. Especially in these crazy COVID times, it can be really challenging to build the meaningful relationships that help privacy work. Make the time. Find the time to have your Zoom coffee chats, to have your lunch and learns, to have your presentations, and make sure that your teams know that you are there and you're available. Invite conversations. When we talked about those questions, it's not just about encouraging the team to think. It's about making sure that they understand that they're a valued contributor to the privacy process, and that the only way that you can help them is by them helping you. Real-life rewards work. As silly as it seems, tangible things like little statues or stuffed animals that give real-world recognition when people do things right make a real difference in building this culture. And the last and maybe most important thing is use what's already there to your advantage. You have an existing business culture. What about it helps your privacy program? What about it is transferable? One of the values we have at Quizlet is teach yourself something new. As an education company, this makes a lot of sense, but it's also been incredibly useful for me to be able to leverage learning something new and introducing a new area that certain people may not be as comfortable with. Another cultural value at Quizlet is being humble, candid, and open. Asking those questions and asking to be taught about what the technology does is a sign of humility. And then giving clear, meaningful feedback helps be open and candid with the teams about what the risks of their choices might be, but also the opportunities that might be there as well. By combining all of these things together, you can set yourself up for success in the long run by making sure that your privacy program, when it gets to the point where you need the longer checklist, is set up for success culturally in your company. And in the short term, it makes sure that you have more boots on the ground, because when everyone understands and values privacy, you're no longer a team of one or two, you're a team of the entire company. Thank you. Look forward to your questions.